I own property, so don't get me wrong, but I've been meaning to create a video about how little property ownership actually matters. You're going to ask, what do I mean by that? You need a property, you need a house, a unit, you need somewhere to live for you, yourself, your family, and everybody in this world. Unless we go back to living in a cave, you need a place to live in. But when you buy property, think about how much that property is yours. What control do you have over it? If you want to build on it, you may or may not be allowed to build, and the council will give you approval to build on a piece of land that you just bought. The council will also tell you that you can't put a tent on your property while you're building, or put a caravan or anything else that's going to allow you to live on the block of land that you just bought while you are building your house. This is happening to one of my colleagues at work, and I didn't even know. He said you're not allowed to pitch a tent, and I'm thinking, well, if you feel like you'll be okay living in a tent, which most of us wouldn't, why wouldn't you be allowed? If the council wants to protect the houses around his empty block of land, so the suburb doesn't look like a caravan park, which is not what it's zoned for, you can limit it to 6 months, 12 months, maybe up to 2 years while you're building. Let's say 12 months would probably be a reasonable amount of time you could do it, but they don't allow you to do that. The government, any sort of government, no matter where in the world you live, will be determining how much you're paying in taxes, land taxes, stamp duties. They call it different things in different places, even different states in Australia, but they decide what you pay on it. Yet it's your property, air quotes. It's not really yours when you've got little to no influence on what your tax is, what the future expense on it will be, what you can do with it, what you can't do with it. Well, this is where this story comes in handy. Sydney residents facing massive rate hikes after council rezones their land. They can simply just do that, and you'll see it's staggering, the difference between what these residents used to pay in council rates and what they need to pay now, and there's nothing they can do about it. Amazing.
The numbers tell the tale, the difference between last year's council rates and today's.
I was shocked, because I'm a full pensioner, and I really can't afford it.
These Castle Hill residents live within sight of a new metro rail station, which led to their land being rezoned for higher density development. That in turn increased the value of their land and their rates, all fine if they could sell to a developer.
Development won't happen here. Council has been insistent on not having those developments happening on this land. They haven't approved one DA approval within this area.
Hillshire Council rejects suggestions it's anti-development, saying it's processing a large number of DAs. The local member says homes have sold for millions after values jumped by up to 500% in 2 years. He backs council as pro-development, but
we need controlled and sustainable development in this particular area. We don't want to see wall-to-wall, 25-storey tower apartments. Nobody wants to see that.
The Planning Minister has some sympathy.
If rates are being increased, at the same time a council is stymieing a development in an area for a particular reason, then I will investigate.
Developers I've spoken to say Hillshire Council is simply too difficult to deal with. Development applications that might take 12 months in another local government area are taking 3 times that here. And developers, including a major one, have walked away.
I thought I had sold, but it's not worth anything. That contract isn't worth anything anymore.
We feel trapped, and there's nothing we can do.
So what I'm saying here is that property ownership is overrated. The governments are running out of money. The property values are dropping. There's less buying and selling properties, which means that the federal government and state governments, they're all going to miss out on a big chunk of the tax revenue that they used to. So they'll have to do something about it. If people are not selling, meaning that nobody is buying or fewer people are buying, means that they'll have to make up that revenue shortfall from somewhere. And how they're going to do it is they're going to increase the council rates from every possible way. They're going to try and increase the taxes to make up for that lost revenue. So that's pretty much my point, but I've got more. Okay, this lovely story is about, or it's titled Victorian Homeowners Most Stressed in Australia.
Houses, big loans and big debt, crippling Victorian families now more than ever.
How am I going to tell my children that we're not going to have a house anymore?
Mother of 6, Julie Mahu.
See, this is what I mean when we're talking about home ownership and being overrated. Everybody is hypnotized into this belief that you must own a property, which is why you will do anything and everything in your power to buy that one property. It's definitely not going to be a rational, realistic decision. It's going to be an emotional one, and the emotional decision in buying something that's by far the biggest investment in your life is just not good news.
Is clinging to a lifeline after defaulting on her home loan twice.
Children need clothes, the children need shoes, they need that, so you put that as a priority instead of the bill. Before you know it, it has got so high that you can't possibly pay it.
She's used a budget to claw her way out of the red, but hers is still one of 270,000 Victorian households in mortgage stress, pouring more than 30% of their total earnings into repayments.
It all comes back to this combination of flat incomes, rising costs and big mortgages.
If they're borrowed to the absolute limit and then other expenses come up, then their budget becomes unaffordable.
Our state makes up half of Australia's top 10 most stressed postcodes list, the most at risk families on Melbourne's fringe. Narre Warren, Berwick, Derrimut, Sydenham and Ballarat account for 25,000 vulnerable households. 14,000 are on the edge of default.
There has been a lot of new developments on small lots, and frankly those prices were very high when people bought.
Pakenham, Frankston and Cranbourne residents aren't far behind, and the bad news is, with a plummeting property market,
it's definitely getting worse.
With 3 of the big 4 banks hiking interest rates in the past month, the typical homeowner will need to fork out an extra $600 a year, adding extra pressure to an already volatile market and mimicking economic trends that led to the US housing crash a decade ago.
It could happen tomorrow. You never know what's around the corner.
The advice is to avoid borrowing the maximum allowance, but for those already in debt, it's to draft a budget and be open to changing banks.
So the environment looks to me to be pretty dodgy over the next 12 to 18 months.
The only little issue I have with my video here that I presented to you, and my opinion, is that Channel 9, if you're in Australia, you know it's one of the free-to-air television stations, commercial television stations, which means that it doesn't get any more mainstream than this. So according to Martin Armstrong of ArmstrongEconomics.com, majority has to be wrong for the system to work. So at what stage will majority believe in this property downturn or crash, or whatever you'd like to believe, and when they do, does this then become a fake story, fake news, meaning that the property will actually not correct? So that's the only thing I'm wary about, and I don't have the answer, because I truly still believe that the property is going to pull back 40% at least, all up from peak to trough in Australia on average. Yet the whole media is talking about the downturn, and no one is really saying 40% in the mainstream. So maybe that's the difference. Maybe the mainstream is going to say, we're going to have a soft landing, 10, 15, maybe 20%, where in reality it will be 40 or 60% down. Maybe that's the difference. All right, I think I'll settle with that. The mainstream is telling us it's not going to be that bad. The worst case is 20%. Where it's actually probably going to be 40% at least, and worst case 60%. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and we'll speak again next time.